I'm Heidi Hutner on Coffee with Hx2, and today we'll be talking about medical drones in, of all places, Madagascar. We'll be talking with a number of people. We have a variety of interviews that will be happening. And first, I'll be speaking with Dr. Pat Wright, a leading primatologist who works on lemurs. And she also has this research site. We've spoken before, maybe you've seen our show, in Madagascar, where they do all kinds of things: biology, anthropology, political science, you name it. And now they've branched out. Well, you've been doing medical work for quite a while, but they're adding to this medical drones, a whole new level of involvement with medicine and technology. So welcome, Pat. Great to have you on the show today.
It's wonderful to be here.
So Pat, tell me about this new relationship that has been developing between the Global Health Institute and the Centre Val Bio, which you founded.
Yes, well, the Centre Val Bio has been doing health issues for a long time in this site in Madagascar. But for the first time now, we are teamed up with the Global Health Institute, and we are taking the technology further to help the people around the park.
So how do you work with medical drones in Madagascar? I know this is the first time this ever happened. How did you even, who thought of this medical drone idea, and how does it work in Madagascar, of all places?
Well, first of all, we have a problem in Madagascar. We have people that live way away from any health clinic, any kind of hospital, and when they get sick, they're in trouble. So the problem's been there for a while. And then Peter Small had this idea: why don't we get the medicine out to them? It's too far for them, the sick people, to walk to the clinic. But if we had somebody on site and we just flew the medicine to them, wouldn't that be a great idea? And I thought, yes, but how are you going to do that?
So you brought these medical drones to the site, and you have laboratories there, right? So if you go take specimens, you can bring them back, which is perfect setup.
Yes, about 3 years ago, we started setting up modern laboratories at our research station. And we have a minus 80 degrees centigrade freezer that will freeze the specimens. We have all kinds of equipment at the laboratory. But of course, the laboratory, our research station, is very far from these villages. So sometimes, some of them are 2 days walk.
Through forests, rainforests, mud, rivers.
It's a very steep terrain too, so that in addition to being far in distance, they're extremely steep and difficult to get to.
And you've been doing this for a while. I know that medical students from Stony Brook University have been going out in teams to these villages, but it's a long trek. It's a difficult trek.
They have to pack up rice for 2 weeks. They have to truck down and up these small paths to get there, and then they finally get there to start to do their magic. But you know, you don't know always which medicines to bring. You don't know. Well, there's emergencies happen all the time, and now with cell phone service, we can have the remote villages actually call in the problem.
And the cell phone service works from these villages?
Everywhere in Madagascar, cell phone service is working now. It's just amazing. That's been a revolution in itself. But cell phones alone are not enough for saving people's lives. But these drones are something that, you know, I couldn't even have dreamed of it. I mean, you can imagine if you're a mother and your child is a raging fever and it's probably malaria, but you don't know. And you know that there's medication that can save that child, but it's a 2-day walk to get that medication. How much better it is if suddenly there's this incredible drone coming through the sky with the medicines that you need to save your child. It's just revolutionary.
And how long does it take for the drone to get from some of these sites back to your laboratory?
It's a little over an hour.
That's extraordinary.
It's amazing.
That's faster than many of our commutes in our suburban locations or city locations to get from the doctor's office to one's home, right?
There's no traffic jams up there in the air.
Wow, that's extraordinary. So what do you see the future of this? Because this was the first experiment with this, right?
Yeah,
so what's the future?
This was a pilot. We were hoping that it would work, but we weren't sure. So now that we know that we could do it, now what we're hoping is to get a fleet of these drones stationed at Centre Val Bio. We're teaming up with Pivot, which is an NGO that works on upgrading the clinics and the hospitals. So we work with them, we work with the Global Health Institute, and we work with all those people. There's about 50,000 in the region that we can reach out to.
That's so exciting. And so it's so interesting to me that you've gone from being a lemur specialist. You came to Madagascar first to look for the bamboo lemur. Which,
Long time ago, yes.
how many years ago was that?
1986, so it's 30 years.
And you were describing that the condition of Madagascar then was very different than it is now.
Yes, well, the roads, even the main roads, were not paved at that time. And things have improved a little bit. Certainly things have improved a lot in the region where we are, because we get ecotourists now, and the villages on the road are, they can get medical care. Now we're worried about expanding to get those villages that are far away.
Very, very exciting and so important. And it's one of the most poor countries in the world.
Oh, yes. Oh, Madagascar. It's the 4th largest island in the world, and I think it's the 3rd poorest from the bottom.
So I'm sure the people really, really will benefit from these drones. And I thank you so much for coming on today. We'll be speaking with more people who are on site. So exciting to have you here. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about what will happen in the future with the drones and with more of your research and work in Madagascar, which is so important.
Great. I'm looking forward to working with the drones well into the future.
Thank you, Pat. And when we come back, I'll be speaking with Dr. Peter Small, head of the Global Health Institute. Hi, we're back with Peter Small. Dr. Peter Small, you're doing this work now with drones in Madagascar with the Global Health Institute. That's your project, and you head it up.
That's correct.
Tell me how you got to the drone piece.
What was interesting, I had not appreciated what a significant problem transportation was. I've spent my entire life doing global health and been to many countries, but I've never seen a place as remote as Madagascar. And so it almost defined itself as a priority that we began working on, which was, if we're going to deliver care in such remote settings, how can we bring innovative technology? And that led us inevitably to drones.
Drones, what an interesting technology, because we think of it as something violent, as a toy, and here you're doing something really incredibly good for the poorest people on Earth, practically. It's one of the poorest nations, right? And you have a background in tuberculosis. You come from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, working on tuberculosis. Is that going to be part of your work in Madagascar?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's like death and destruction from above has been repurposed to provide health care to the poorest and most underserved people in the world. I think it's really phenomenally cool.
It is cool. And you were on the ground this summer? You were actually hiking in Madagascar?
Well, I am most impressed by the spectrum of people that we have here, the diversity of people that we have here at Stony Brook. And so I really do very little. I mostly just coordinate the work of others. And in this case, it was 4 remarkable medical students who were actually there doing the hard work, and a great company who have created a really unique humanitarian drone.
So how did it work? What was it like this summer? How was the procedure, and did it go as you expected?
Well, last year when I was in Madagascar, I saw a child who had seizures, and that's kind of an unusual thing. You probably don't know a lot of people who have seizures, and yet seizures are common in these villages. And it struck me as though intestinal parasites might be the cause. So over the course of the year, the students and I worked on a project to try and figure out whether intestinal parasites were a big problem and whether they may be causing some of these seizures. And towards the end of that, they started to design the project, and it was onerous. They needed to buy a generator, and they had to hike in with a centrifuge and liquid nitrogen. And it suddenly dawned on me, it's like, wouldn't it be easier just to fly the samples immediately back to the laboratory every day in a drone?
That is brilliant. So, and I've been to Madagascar, and I know how treacherous some of that hiking can be. It's very wet. They have a heavy rainy season. It's not easy for sick people to get out of their villages and to a medical facility, and the medical facilities are not always the best, as you know. But there's this laboratory at Centre Val Bio, which is part of your work, and you're able then to fly the drone to this village, which takes how many days to hike to?
Well, there are a variety of villages, but the first village they went, they hiked 2 days just to get to the village. Most of the villages then are a day hike away from each other.
So that's pretty difficult for a sick person to get out of that situation to get help.
Absolutely. I mean, about 1 billion people in the world lack access to reliable roads, and these people are certainly among them. They not only lack access to a road, you can't even get a motorbike into these villages. It's entirely dependent upon walking on these muddy, steep, and slippery trails.
And for children, who might, like you're describing, there's a high rate of dysentery from what I understand. They could die in that time period. They might not make that trek. It's not even possible, I would imagine.
Yeah, I've spent a significant percentage of my life, I've spent a significant amount of time in my life trying to understand what it's like to be poor and sick in remote areas, and really what illness begins is a gauntlet of challenges between the sick people and care, and one of them is obviously transportation.
Access and speed. You don't always have time, right?
And the time off. So these people are living on they're subsistence farmers. They're really living on a razor's edge of poverty and extreme poverty, and having to take off a day or two to walk to a village to get health care is a significant expense to them, and consequently they're disinclined to do so.
So what are some of the diseases that you're seeing there that you're anticipating being able to help with this technology?
Yeah, I think so what we did on this trip was really reduce to practice the concept that you can fly drones out to villages and return clinical specimens promptly to labs. In a sense, it's easy, intuitive, straightforward, but what we found were challenges we hadn't anticipated. The regulatory challenges. We had to go through 3 different ministries to get approval to fly the drones. The logistics of exporting the drones from the United States was actually one of the most complicated things. The U.S. Customs would not release them until they had personally inspected the contents. And then the logistics of getting them out to the field station, and then who knew how the villagers would react to these drones.
And how did they react?
Well, I was not there when they react, so I'm going to suggest you talk to the students about that.
Okay.
But I think the next step, so now that we've shown it can be done, I think the big question is, why will we be doing it? And the first application which we're pursuing is for surveillance. Strange and exotic new diseases like Ebola and Zika frequently emerge in remote settings. And in a place like Madagascar, diseases of antiquity like plague reoccur with some regularity. So being able to empower community health workers to call in a drone when they see a patient suffering from a condition that they don't understand will not only benefit that patient, but it provides a wonderful surveillance mechanism for the country and for the whole world.
It's very preventative.
There's that. I think the second issue is really how we move them into the healthcare system in terms of not just diagnosing, but also treating, and integrating innovative technology into evolved health systems is a big part of what we're focusing on here at the Global Health Institute. For me, the next step, and I just spent the morning writing a grant to do this, is to use drones for tuberculosis control. Right now, the basis of global TB control is a policy called DOTS, Direct Observation of Therapy. And now what we're looking at is something called DROTS, Drone Observed Therapy. The idea is that we will give a community health worker an emergency satellite beacon, like what you have on a lot of the sailboats out in the harbor. When they see a patient who has an undiagnosed cough who might have TB, they deploy that beacon, they put it in a field, and a drone will come in and land with sputum containers and an instructional video on a small Android phone that tells them how to collect sputum. The drone will fly away. If the patient's found to have TB, it'll fly back. And at that point, it'll contain medications. And the medications will be in a special container that records whether or not it's been opened every day, and also be accompanied by a special recorder which can detect and count coughs. So the idea would be that you would drop this off, and then you'd come back a month later and replace that box with a new box, take it back to the lab, and then you can say, is this person taking their medications, and are they getting better? And if the answer is yes and yes, you can relax. They can stay in the village. But if they're not taking their medicine, or if they're taking their medicine and not getting better, then we can intensify the patient's care.
That's
So this is just the next
incredible.
step.
It's really incredible. I commend you. It's what a brilliant combination of things that you've put together. It's really incredible. So you do work that is a combining of policy, human rights, medicine, and technology.
Yeah, I mean, at its core for me, global health is actually a philosophy of equity and interconnectedness. And to pursue that philosophy, we really have to reach out broadly across campus to all of the disciplines, the ones you've mentioned, and many more.
And many more, and many more. And so there's a component, of course, I come from the sustainability piece, which is, this is good too, because you're not putting in roads, burning more carbon, destroying forests to get to people, and upsetting their whole way of life. You're able to help them without disturbing, in a sense, how they live and what they're doing and the local ecology.
You know, a huge transformation in my own thinking in the past decade has been to think about healthcare from the patient's perspective, this patient-centric perspective on being sick and poor in rural Madagascar. And you realize that they actually really don't want to walk to a village. They don't want to leave their children behind. And many times they associate that hospital in that village with bad outcomes and death.
Oh, that's
And they get
understandable.
treated poorly as well.
Right,
so
right.
the more that we can use technology in an innovative way to forward deploy healthcare to the patients, I think the better we'll all be.
And it seems like this reminds me of the old-fashioned doctor who arrives with a briefcase, only it's the modern version.
Absolutely. We're making house calls with drones.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I thank you so much for coming on our show today, and I hope you'll come back.
All
because
right,
there's
Heidi, well,
much
thank
more
you.
to tell. And so are you doing this in other places, or are you really concentrating now in Madagascar?
You know, for me, the ultimate challenge is the transition from global health to planetary health.
Right.
By which I mean, it's not really just about human health. I mean, the facts are that human health is basically improving worldwide, not equitably and not fast enough. But the real challenge is that the health of the Earth is in a sad state and getting worse.
Indeed.
Ocean acidification, global warming, deforestation, you name it. So really what Pat and I are most excited about is using Madagascar as a test case for how we improve human health and the ecosystems that they depend on.
That is a beautiful, beautiful principle, and I support it fully. So great to have you on today, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Take
Thanks
care.
for having me.
We'll be back with the medical students who are on the ground in Madagascar working with the medical drones. We're back with 4 medical students who were on the ground in Madagascar. So first, tell me, how were you chosen to do this project with the medical drones in Madagascar?
Well, I think it was really, we all came in with a desire to do global health. That's why we're doing medicine. So we initiated it and sought Peter out looking for a project.
So it was your idea to do a project on global health. Did you think you would do it in Madagascar, or just in general, could be anywhere on the planet?
Could be anywhere. I think Madagascar, we all felt we had the best chance to make a long-term impact, and we all liked the kind of permanence of this project, and Peter has some great mentorship that pulled us towards it too.
That's excellent. So now how did the drone piece come together?
Well, the drone piece was kind of a last-minute addition to our project. We had a lot of logistic problems with trying to transport these samples from these rural villages, which can be far away, quite far away, 2 days hike sometimes, all the way back to the research center. And we were talking with Peter about it, and he said, wouldn't it be cool if we could get drones there? And we all thought he was joking at first. But then maybe about 3 weeks before we left, he said, we're getting drones.
Yep.
And so we were all obviously super excited about it, and it made us, we still had to figure out some logistics, but it brought a lot more excitement to the project for sure.
So Lee, were you surprised by this idea of drones? Was it a shock to you?
Absolutely. I mean, it was hard for us to even, we were told to just proceed normally as if there wouldn't be any drones in case anything would go wrong, because it was the pilot, kind of idea. So we went on and did our whole project, as if there weren't any drones. And then when they did arrive and they did get through customs and through all the, the ministry, the government and everything, we were just so excited, and it was it was so exciting to hear that they have arrived and we could use them.
So was it a long wait for the drones to arrive?
Yeah, there are a lot of logistical hurdles that we had to get through. We personally weren't involved in that boat. I remember at one point the drones were supposed to come, and then we got an email saying that they were held up in customs, and we were super worried. We thought that Peter had worked with the Madagascar government and had gotten all the official agreements. And so one of the connections that Pat had with the Madagascar MySet company, Benjamin went to the airport to go and see what he could figure out, work out. And it turns out the drones hadn't even come to Madagascar. They were stuck in US customs because we totally forgot about how to bring the drones out of US. And then they got stuck at France, and then they came here. So we ended up being able to utilize the drones like the last 2 days of our research.
So what was your research project?
So we studied the prevalence of parasitic infections in the rural villages around Ranamafana National Park.
So to break that down for people who don't know what parasitic means in Madagascar, are you saying worms? Intestinal worms.
Yes, worms.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so these would get into people's bodies through their feet because many people are barefoot there. That's correct?
Some of the parasites did. Others, it's fecal oral route, and we also studied how those parasites, or one of the parasites, can then get in the brain and cause epilepsy as
Oh
well.
my goodness. And so how would you get that kind of parasite?
That would be a fecal oral transmission, but it's through, first you get it through pork, and then through the fecal oral, it'll end up in your brain.
Eating undercooked pork, you get the adult tapeworm infection, and then through fecal oral contamination, you can get seizures.
And is this prevalent? A lot of, do you see a lot of this in Madagascar?
We did. We saw very high rates, and it's the lack of overall sanitation is kind of what leads to it, because most of these villages don't have good latrines, they don't have running water, it's all using river water, not boiling it. It's just very easy to spread things by not washing your hands well or not using a latrine.
So tell us the story. So you get to Madagascar. I know, having been there myself, it's a 30-hour trip. So you're very tired. You arrive. You get to Centre Val Bio, where it's a research center that Pat Wright created and set up next to this beautiful rainforest. What was that like? And then just kind of lead us through your story. So you arrive, and what?
So I think I can speak for everybody when we say we were kind of in awe of the actual research center. You know, we were expecting extreme rural conditions, no electricity, all that jazz, and we had our camping equipment. We were ready to hike, and we come, and it's absolutely beautiful. You know, Pat Wright, she has done an incredible job, and she has built an amazing research center there with a really awesome laboratory in the basement, a really nice dining hall. The lounges were really beautiful, and
tell us about the sound.
you could hear running water wherever you are. It was incredible. The way the location of the center is actually right next to a huge waterfall area, and just it's
So you hear that rushing sound all the time. It's very soothing. So you arrive, and then what's next?
Well, the next thing is we have to start our expeditions. So we went on 3 expeditions. The first one was 17 days long. And so we get there, and we're trying to figure out, how do we carry everything that we have out to these villages? And we're trying to load up packs. Paul and I were going to carry 70 pounds on our back. The girls are going to carry 55-pound packs. And we're getting ready to do it.
And what's in these packs? Tell us.
In these packs are all our equipment. We have all the stuff we need to collect the blood samples. So we have the gauze pads, alcohol pads. We have the lancets to poke the fingers. We also have a centrifuge, so that it's a centrifuge so we can spin the serum samples. We have a generator. That was probably one of the trickiest things. How do you get this 25-pound generator onto a pack?
40
40-pound
pound.
generator, right?
Yes.
40-pound generator onto a pack.
Did you carry the generator?
I did not. I had the centrifuge.
We had the centrifuge. And then the other thing is we had to keep these blood samples cold. So we had to get a liquid nitrogen tank. And so now we have this 30-pound liquid nitrogen tank full of liquid nitrogen, and we have to carry it out to these villages. And we're like, well, what if this liquid nitrogen, what if we slip and fall? What if we spill this liquid nitrogen? I mean, that'll really burn you if it gets on you.
Yeah.
And
describe the condition, the hiking conditions.
Oh my goodness.
So once you have all these
Wow.
packs on your back and you have sleeping bags, I take it, and
Sleeping
tarps
bags,
and clothes to be
Tents.
wet and cold, and it's also leech country, isn't it?
Yes.
So did you experience the leeches?
Everyone did except for Cohen.
and which is a good thing, because Cohen was the most afraid of getting a leech.
The whole time she was.
Terrified.
Yeah.
I wore
They just fall out of the trees, right?
not where we were going,
Okay.
but that was
Common.
definitely a concern of mine.
Uh-huh.
I wore
Raining leeches. Sounds like fun.
I wore like a sock and then a pair of leggings and then knee-high socks and then my pants and then my boots went up to my knees and like there was duct tape at one point.
So you were prepared to keep those leeches off of your body, and you were successful. So you've got all these packs, you've got all this equipment, liquid nitrogen, a generator. Can you demonstrate the size of the generator?
It's like this big.
Now, did you have to think of all this yourselves? You're your
Yes.
own
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
This is
Well-
all your own invention, the whole thing, right?
We had good mentorship,
You had
but
good
we did.
mentorship.
We Peter was amazing, Pat was amazing, and then Luis Marcos is an infectious disease doctor at Stony Brook, and he was a wonderful mentor as well.
Okay.
So that helped. But
Okay, that helps. But now, did you go off on your own, the four of you, with all this equipment into the jungle?
So we went with the Centre Val Bio mobile health team.
Okay,
So they're a group
that must
of,
have helped.
Oh yes.
They knew where to take you, right? Those have
Yes.
incredible guides, I know.
Yes. And they're just amazing, humble people that just love going on these expeditions and helping people that
And these are the
really
Malagasy
far.
people.
Yes.
So they speak Malagasy, they know this territory, they know where to take you,
Yeah.
they have a relationship already
Yes.
with the local communities.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's 3 nurses, and then there's, a navigator, a cook, and us.
Okay.
And our translator, and who else was with us? That's it.
I think that's about it.
Did you feel a little bit like Jane Goodall on an expedition with your group and carrying the stuff? That's my image of you. That
a
you're
little bit.
A little bit.
marching off
Yeah.
into the forest.
Yeah.
So you went to how many villages again?
To 12
12.
villages.
12
Yeah,
villages.
12 different villages over 37 days.
It's kind of interesting. The plan was 14, but it illustrates well the difficulty getting to these villages because we had to cut out to those villages because of
Now
a
you're
river
the hiker.
flooding.
Just a little bit of preface here. So you know what you're talking about. And if you say it's difficult,
It's very
It's
difficult.
difficult. because you're from Montana, I know you do a lot of
Yes.
hiking, Alaska, this whole. Okay.
I live for it. Yes.
So tell us how difficult it was. Describe it
It
for
was
us.
quite difficult. The first 2 days, the first village we went to was a 2-day hike. Jaden and I were carrying very big packs, which made things difficult. But we were going up and down very steep hills. It's very muddy.
Were
we had
there
to
trails?
Mountains. Maybe
Mountains.
hills for him, but these were mountains.
Fair enough, mountains. The trails are
mountains.
a little bit sketchy. They're always very muddy because it's rained a lot. We had to take these old, almost sinking dugout canoes across the river the first day.
What about the
it's
rice
rough.
paddies?
Oh, yes.
The rice paddies.
We had Paul go first because he was the hiker.
Right.
And so as we were going through, all of a sudden I see Paul waist deep in mud
Mud.
from a rice paddy, and we had to pull him out
Essentially
of this rice
quicksand.
paddy. It was pretty much
Really?
like quicksand.
Yes. I learned to follow the guide after that. I'm not working off on my own.
Oh, I see. So you were doing your own thing. You weren't quite listening to the guide.
A little bit.
A little bit. Yeah, no, I get that because you thought you've done this. You know what this is
Exactly.
about. But we're in another world now.
Snow is very different from mud. It's a
Yes.
different ballgame.
Yes, yes.
The joke of the summer was that this was the dry season.
Not
Not
the
dry.
season. So
Rains
you get
every-
this village where you look very different from the people there, right? How do they react to you? And you don't speak their language, I take it? You don't speak Malagasy? Right?
No.
Okay. So what was that like?
Well, at first they stare and they giggle and they're a little shy, but they warm up to us after a few days and they get excited to see us, I think, and they're very curious.
And were you directly interacting with them with the medicine? Did you take their blood? Did you take the fecal matter directly from them? I mean, or was there an intermediary? Were there local people helping?
We had people that were helping us, but we were also directly taking the blood samples and the fecal samples. Well, we gave out fecal stool cups
I see.
to them so that they could do it in the privacy of their homes.
And-
And then
and-
they brought it back to us.
So they were comfortable with you then?
But they were really comfortable, and that's just a testament to the relationship and the trust that Pat Wright and Centre Val Bio and the mobile health team has been able to build with these villages over the last 30 years. I mean, trust like this doesn't come easy in global health, and it takes a long time to build. And we were, the beneficiaries of this long-standing relationship between Centre Val Bio.
Very important, very important. Yeah, I know Pat's very carefully worked with the country of Madagascar and the people there. So you're waiting, you must be thinking, okay, when are the drones coming, right? we want to see what's going to happen here. And were you surprised that it was taking so long?
Yes and no.
Yes,
Because you were in Madagascar and you knew the complications.
Yeah.
Right?
exactly.
So at some point I know you split up because some of you stayed in the village where the drones came and some of you were back in the laboratory. So how did that divide up?
So when the drones were here, Lee and I stayed at Centre Val Bio.
Okay.
And Paul and Jaden were the lucky ones, and they got to go out into the villages and see the villagers react to the drones when they first landed. And I'm sure they could tell more
Amazing.
about that.
So tell us about the arrival of the drones and the reaction of the people there and how it all worked.
It was
You actually went down to the site where it was landing, and I
Yeah.
stayed, because it landed in another village, and I stayed back into the village where we were currently working.
Right.
And from what I saw, is my first,
So you were the only one there when the drones arrived of this group, or you were as well?
So they were flying to two different villages.
Oh,
The
I see.
first flights, I hiked over to the other village to make sure I saw them. And I think you were going to talk
and
about.
I was in the other village, but I had to fly over the village I was in to get to the village Paul was in. So I can just tell you about, we heard this buzzing of a drone, right? And it's like it doesn't fit in. You hear the rainforest, you hear waterfalls, you hear everything.
Bird
but
sounds,
you don't bird
frogs.
sounds. Exactly, but you don't expect to hear a drone. And so all the villagers notice it. They notice it first. They hear the sound. Everybody's looking up at the sky, and you just hear people going, screaming and clapping and cheering for this drone as it flies over that first village. And then it went to the village where Paul was.
So they weren't
And-
scared?
There was kind of a mix. I think those villagers had a better understanding that they knew more that the drone was coming because we'd had a meeting. The other village, it was less expected.
I
So
see.
at first, they knew the drone was coming, but the first thing was kind of to back away from the field where it was landing and some hesitation and fear. As soon as the drone landed, though, they were so excited. Everybody just basically picture people running towards the drone from all sides. Very different from your normal perceptions of drones.
So that must have been really thrilling for you. Now, on your end, you're in the laboratory. You are packing the drones up, I'm assuming. You're putting equipment into it and shipping it out. So tell us about that.
So we were working with a couple of the engineers that came with the drone, and they just kind of, we were just working out some of the logistical issues, and we really just kind of like stood back and watched because this was an automated drone.
Okay. Did you put anything special in the drone?
Well, they actually at the first test run they wanted to see. They wanted to put something in that wasn't valuable, that couldn't, if the drone happened to crash, that, our whole project wouldn't be ruined. So what they did put in is a pizza.
A pizza?
Yeah. And we sent it to them, and they received this wonderful pizza where they've been eating rice for every day, and they were just happy to have something different.
Word must have gotten out that I wanted some pizza, or really wanted pizza.
You'd had it with white
I'd
rice.
had it with white rice. I mean, rice, talking about pizza. And all of a sudden this drone lands. We're expecting just to load our samples in. Before we load our samples in, I open up this box and it says, drone and pizza, 20 minutes worldwide on a box. And you open it up and there's 6 slices of pizza there.
And it was warm.
And it was still warm.
Wow, so that's
Hot
pizza delivery of the future. So we're going to have to wrap it up very soon. So I just want to hear a little bit about the piece of you are now, I know you did do a test run with taking samples and sending them back to the lab. How did that go?
Beautifully. We flew blood and we flew fecal samples, and both of you can speak to it, but I think they showed up
We received
perfectly.
the samples quickly, and we put them in the freezer where, you know, we stored them, and we continued to analyze the fecal samples. And yeah, it was
It was
great
such
help.
a short process, you know.
And how long? What did it take to go from that village, which would take how many days to walk back to the laboratory?
Take a day.
Take a day.
But it was
But a difficult day. Your
Yes.
average person's not going to do that. So,
Yes.
so you flew back, and how quickly did it take? I mean, how much time did it take between putting that matter into the drone and flying back to the lab?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Amazing, amazing. So, do you envision doing more of this?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This would save, as much as there are logistical problems with drones, the logistical problems of getting liquid nitrogen, which Madagascar ran out of while we were in the middle of there, and sending somebody with, you know, blood samples or stool samples from the villages and having them have to hike back every day for a research project. To be able to just load it into a drone, fly it back, and recall that drone when we needed it would save, make research easier. And then there's so many more things it could do as far
Save
as medical
lives.
delivery,
Save
save lives,
lives.
vaccinations.
Checking on people who are ill,
Yep.
testing them. So this is fabulous, and I think what a great, this was the end of your first year of medical school at Stony Brook University Hospital. That must have been just an extraordinary thing, right, to think about. Did you imagine you would do such an incredible project in your first year of medical school? What an opportunity. And what an opportunity for you to make a difference in the world. That's the really exciting piece to me, is that you see now, you could have a dream, of a fantasy really, to go in and science fiction, right? And you made it happen. And one last thing, I know a couple of you mentioned this to me in other conversations we've had about how wonderful it is that drones could be used in a positive way, instead of we see so much of them in negative light. And so fearful, it's surveillance and violence, and so I think it's great. All of you have mentioned this to me. Any final words about that, about the positive purpose of the drones?
Just feel like there's endless options, there's endless ways to use these drones in these villages. It just works so perfectly in a place like Madagascar, where there's no roads and people don't leave their villages very easily. It's just, there's just so many doors that can be opened.
So many doors.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jaden, Lee, Paul, and Cohen.
Thank you.
Sorry for not introducing you earlier. Terrific. Now you're in your second year of medical school. Goodness knows what you'll be up to this year. Keep in touch, and thanks so much for coming on our show.
Thank you.
Thanks. So that was an incredible episode of Coffee with Hx2, and I feel honored to have a terrific set of guests. Our 4 medical students, Dr. Peter Small from the Global Health Institute, and Dr. Patricia Wright, who is a leading lemur specialist, world-class, multi-prize winning conservationist, and just look what we can do in terms of planetary health. It's just extraordinary. Thanks so much.